You have
Those
any?
have a lot of curves. If you can pick up well, there are NEMA enclosures on eBay and Amazon that I get. You know those, but also Pelican boxes like luggage. You can get nice flat spaces on there too.
I think, Jeff, how do you lay out all of the pieces you're going to use? You put them on its own platform and then wire them from there.
Well, first of all, this box, I went out this morning and bought this, and it turns out when I got it, it's actually got all these extra pieces molded on the side, which makes it a lot stronger. And then the top, it's got these cute little latches like this. The top comes off completely. And originally I was going to get a hinged top, but then I thought, well, I found this one and it looked okay. So inside I've got an aluminum plate that I just cut. Basically, you can just screw these down wherever they seem to fit, whatever's convenient. So you have to figure out what side you can run the cables out of or whatever, and then screw the boards down. And that's two of those 30 amp power drivers like you guys are using on your steering. And then this is that big perf board I showed one other time that I ordered from somewhere, and that's that ST Micro microcontroller board. And these are my connectors over here. These two are for the two motor drivers, and then these three are for my 3 quadrature decode. And one of these is going to be for the analog for the steering feedback. And to start with, that's all I need for external connections. If you look on the back, there's not much there. I just simply have wires from those connectors to my module, so there isn't really a whole lot of wiring there. So with these modern processors, with all the fancy peripherals, I don't need a lot of logic on the board. I just have wires from the pins on the microcontroller to the pins on the connectors. Then I just have to decide how I want to get wires in and out of the box. And to start with, I'll probably just cut a hole in the side and run the wires through. And like, for instance, my quadrature encoders just have a connector on the end. It'll plug right into this. All I got to do is just cut a hole through the side of the box and run it through and plug it in. And then eventually I might put some decent connectors on the side. I figured this box that I bought can be a sacrificial box. I'll figure out what I want, and then when I'm done, I can go back and start with a fresh one and do it right then at that point.
So I like that it's clear, so you can see where the smoke is coming from without opening it.
Oh, exactly. It'll fill up real nice. Boy, it'll look real nice in there. So I don't know how I'm going to mount it down. Actually, with these extra pieces, let me show it like this. So they molded all this extra plastic on the corner, which makes the thing a lot stronger, but it also gives me a bunch of ribs that I can put screws through to hold it down or do whatever I want. The one thing is for my plate, I have to bolt it to the case somehow, so I'm going to drill some holes through the bottom, which then I should waterproof those if I'm going to do that. So, which I don't think my first one's going to be waterproof anyway, but that's just something to be thinking towards, because usually I get it all done and say, oh, it's raining outside. What do I do now? So it'd be nice to waterproof it up front for a change and see how that goes.
Walk around with an umbrella above your robot.
Or you could just put an umbrella on your robot, I guess. I hadn't thought about that one.
There you go. So those connectors, how did you choose which connectors to use? Are those standard ones from your encoders, or are you going to...
Well, two of the encoders came with connectors already on them, so that it was easy to pick that one. And for the motor drivers, I've got these big boards. Actually, I guess the board's about the same size as those other ones that I bought, but they had a 10-pin connector, so it's just a ribbon cable connector that goes between the two. So I originally wired it up for those, then I found these other ones a couple days ago and ordered those up, so I've got those. So it's like those ones that you guys are using. So I'll probably just run individual jumper wires, those little jumpers that plug right onto the pins, and just put it on both sides, hook that up. That way I can switch back and forth to either type of motor driver that I want to do. So it's really just a matter of looking what I already had and then put connectors on that I thought would mate to those.
Jeff, do you know about cable glands?
I know something about them, but I haven't really played with them, so I might go with something like that.
I started using many connector round Deutsch connectors, and it was just such a pain to add things, and I started using cable glands and just I put them on there, and then I start running cables through it, and everything's nice and watertight. They're dirt cheap, simple to use.
You have to make sure it's big enough you can get your connector through the hole, and I guess that's
Yep.
the biggest issue on that.
Yep. If you just get a few and put them on there, I think you'll enjoy using them.
As I say, to start with, I'll just drill a hole through the side and stick the wire through, and then when I go back to work on it, then I can do something about. If I drill the appropriate size hole to start with to put the cable gland in, then I can take the wire out and put the gland back on and put it back in. So I guess that would work out.
Are the cable glands like an O-ring that allows you to pass the cable through the box?
Yep, it's basically a kind of a hollow bolt with a not really an O-ring, but almost a cylinder of rubber with a hole through it, and they're usually split also, so you can take them out completely. And then there's a nut that goes over that compresses it down. So you get your cables through it, and then just twist it down, and it compresses that rubber cylinder around the cables. So they're like a buck or two each, and super simple to use.
That's the cost of one Deutsch pin.
Yeah, yeah, and the time that it takes to put one on, right?
So are we ready for the next subject?
Get off of that one.
So here's my new solid state 3D LiDAR that I bought. And if you
Ooh.
they get a focus. Come on, you can do it. Anyway, it tells you it says the color of the wire and tells you what to hook them up to. It's got two windows on the front, and you can see how big it is in my hand. It's not very big, and it gets a little bit warm. I see it's warmed up right now. Let's see. So let's go to screen sharing and go to this screen. So when we start it up, they give you an executable with it. They apparently they say you need a driver to make this work. And I go to the Seed Studio website and download their driver, which is a .rar file, and that won't uncompress. So I think it's a corrupt file. So I go to the other people that's selling it, and their file was a step file, which I think is a 3D model or something. So fortunately, what was already loaded on my computer worked. So I'll run this here. And we say it's USB COM14 and connect. And the first thing you notice, it's awfully hard to read. So we come up here and say language, say English. Then we can say connect. And then you come down here and say start. And that right there is a picture of my ceiling right now. And if I look across to the other desks over there, that in the middle, that's a chair sitting there, and here's a monitor on the table, and these pieces are part of the desk. And down here is a little rolling, like a bookcase type thing. And there's another chair sitting there, and it's got this problem where, see, as I move it, see, then all of a sudden it jumps, so everything in the background now turned black. And this is my wall about 2 foot in front of me right here. And here's some junk on my desk. And this right there is the cable that I'm looking at. And it turns out the depth resolution is about 1 centimeter. So it's lucky it can see that, because it's fairly small thing. Let's see, I was looking at this thing on my floor here. This piece sticking out here is the foot of the desk sticking out. And it's maybe ½ an inch high. If I get to the side, maybe we can see it here. It just doesn't want to show up very well. But here again, here's that problem where, see, the black is dropping out. Now they say that if you come over here to the side, and it's set to auto HDR. So if I say stop it, and then set that to super duper, or what do they call it? They call it super HDR, and set that, and run that. now supposedly it's supposed to work better, and it looks like it is working better because now I can see the stuff in the distance, and there's that wall in front of me that I was looking at before. So again, there's a chair sitting there, and there's that rolling bookcase thing, and that's the is that a desk? What is that? I don't know what that is. And here's the stuff we started looking at. So there's a chair sitting there, and again, here's a desk, and here's a monitor, and possibly you can set this, because instead of the super HDR, you can set it to no HDR. I can't remember what the H stands for, but DR is dynamic range, I believe is what that stands for. And they say super HDR takes multiple images, possibly with different ratios or something, and it adds them all together, and that's why it works better. They say if you're going to do something, if you're interested in more in the background, then set it to this. So speaking of background, here looking across, that kind of square rectangle right in the middle, that's somebody's door that's about, I'd say 30 feet away from me right now. And if we look over here, there's a door back in this area here, but you can't see it apparently. And here's another door that's along the wall next to me, and that's probably about 30 feet away also. And there's actually right in here somewhere, there is like a fire alarm thing on the wall. And when I played with it before, I could actually see that after a while, but I can't see it right now. So that's not showing up. And then the other mode is they have the point cloud mode. You set it like that. And see again, here's the flat wall. And I'm still trying to see that fire alarm, and I don't see it there. And it looks fairly, as long as you're looking straight onto it, it looks fairly good. But as soon as you start to turn it sideways, well, that's still not working too bad. This right here is that's the wall of my desk, wall of my cube right there. And then across here is the wall over there. It has the door on it. So if I get this, if you look straight into it, it's a fairly nice looking picture that comes out of it. And we'll look at some other stuff here. So there's the tops of some cube walls. There's what those things are. So if I come back over here, and so again, here's that bookcase, and here's a chair. And if I come over here, here's the desk. There's a Turtlebot 3 sitting on top of it. There's a monitor in the back, and there's a chair sitting there. So you can kind of make it out by looking at this, and it looks like a fairly flat background on that. So let's take an example here and say, let's look at this bookcase. Now, if you had a Connect sensor and you rotate this sideways, you'd see a nice square cube-type object there. But as soon as you start turning it, it just falls apart, and it just looks really noisy. So I'm not sure what the answer to that is. And another thing I noticed, if I look at, say, a wall over here, and we look at the wall, it's hard to see, but the wall actually looks curved, which seems kind of odd. Let's see if I can get a picture back here. So again, here's the wall in the background. That's maybe 15 to 20 feet away. If I rotate this around, I'm not real good at playing with this yet. So again, it looks like that the wall is slightly curved there, and I'm not sure why it comes out like that. But you should, right there, you can kind of see like that's like part of the desk, like some bookcases sticking out. But it's not near as sharp as you'd get with a Connect sensor. Although a Connect sensor is probably a higher resolution than this. This is 160 by 60, I believe, is what the resolution is. So all in all, I was hoping it was going to work a lot better than this. And I ended up paying, I got it from Seed Studio, and they wanted $269 plus $15 3-day shipping. So it came to $284 for this thing. And, compared to several $1,000s they want for other sensors, it still may work out well. So if I put it on my robot, so if I put on the SICK 2D scanner to do long range and localization and obstacle avoidance, then use this to do things like, say, looking down here to see there's my wastebasket, so you can have it up front to say, is there a curb or is there a hole in the ground, things like that. It might work for that. Or just simply if you point it out into free space. If there's people walking by, you can see people there, but right now there's nobody to see. So it might work if you have it outside and you're just looking straight out in front of you. And we'll pretend that case right there is a person. You might be able to detect that they're there, because the color on here, I think, is representing the distance. So basically, even though when you start turning this and the image falls apart, it could be that, you know, just the fact that those dots are of a certain color, you know that there's a plane right there that's a certain distance away. This is real hard to get this to rotate correctly, but actually the more I sit here and look at it, I'm thinking, yeah, it's kind of a nice looking image I got there now, but it seems like it should be a lot more usable than this. And the other thing is they just released it too. In fact, the guy told me, I said something about, do you have a ROS driver? And I gave a link to the web page, and he wrote back and says, oh, we're currently working towards a Linux RDK that will be working something about release it in these next 2 weeks. So apparently it's brand new enough. They're just getting the drivers released for people to start playing with. So maybe they're going to put some improvements into it, and then hopefully I can download new firmware into it. So I can zoom in. No, I can't. I guess I can zoom in and out. That's all the closer I can zoom in with it. So, here's the other thing I was looking at. If I look at the ceiling here, this is on the ceiling there's a row of fluorescent lights, and it's got a cover over the top. So if we take and look at that, if we come from the side of that, let's see, how do I do that? There we go. It looks kind of like a trough that's buried in the ceiling there. It's backwards. It's actually sticking out. So there we go. So you can see there's a nice definite bump there. You can see the plane of the ceiling, and you can see the plane on top of that light there. So it may be, if you play with it enough, you get it to do something well enough to be worth the money. So I still prefer the Kinect sensor, but they tell me those don't work outside due to the amount of light. And this thing says it'll run up to 80,000 lux, which somewhere, if you look at Wikipedia, I think it says the sun can get up to 120,000 lux, and that might be for looking directly at it. I'm not sure about that. So I haven't taken it outside and tried it yet. And maybe it's like the radar units; those seem to work much better outside. Inside, they bounce off everything, and they're really noisy. So it could be, if you take this outside where you don't have a lot of stuff around you, and say you're just looking for people walking around, that might be useful for that. No, that white stuff right there. I'm holding my hand up right now, and for some reason it's got this white. Let's see if I can make it do it here. It has this nice white plane that's a real definite. I don't think that's actually associated with anything. So that might be some artifacting at the end of it or something. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe I'm too close to it. As I get closer to it, it shows up, that white plane shows up there, which isn't really there because the red is my hand.
What's the field of view on that?
I think they say it's 60 degrees horizontal by like 30 degrees vertical or something. I think is what they say.
Nice.
And if you look right at, say, a monitor, here's a reflective monitor, and you get this specular reflection in the middle that's that white dot again. And see that white stuff's popping in and out as I'm moving it around here. Now, I suppose you don't have to look at stuff quite this close, but, and also if you look at this, is this showing up? You can see the LEDs flashing in it. So apparently it's like, I don't know if they're lasers or LEDs, but if you're not looking at it with the camera, those actually look just a slight dull red. You can see it's just a little flickering to it. I see they show up real nice on here. Oh, well, I guess you can't see that since I'm sharing my screen. So let me try that again. Stop share. Okay, now you can see it, right? So it's got those four dots in there, and I don't know if those are lasers or LEDs, but that's, as I say, if you're sitting there looking at it, it's just kind of a little dull red. You can just barely see something flickering in there, and the camera just is picking up the infrared, so that's why it's seeing that. So I don't know if this is putting out a pattern or just simply putting out, here, let's try this. I can't really see anything it's putting out, so maybe if I go turn the lights off, I may be able to see something. But so I think what they're doing, I think they just put out a flood. It's just like a strobe light that goes off, and then it's whatever the circuitry is inside of this thing detects the 160 by 60 pixel size. So I don't know if they've got a sensor with that many sensors on, or they're doing it like the fancier ones use a DLP, which is the little mechanical mirrors that they put in the LCD projectors. I was LCD. No, they're not LCD projectors because they're using those mirrors. But anyway, that's what I know about it so far, and it does indeed work, but it's not working as well as I'd like it to. So don't run out and buy one yet. So unless that's exactly what you need.
And what's the distance that they say? Is it like 10 meters?
I think they say 12 meters. Now I don't know if I point it. Let's see the back of my room here.
They have 25 and 50 meter versions.
Of the same brand?
Yep.
You can also get this in a higher resolution. I can't remember what the next resolution up is. Maybe if Kyler's looking at it, he can tell you what the resolution is. But this is just the one this is the one that's available commercially right now. You can buy it off the shelf. So that's why I got this one.
The 50 meter one says, "Don't look into the laser."
Yeah, it's probably best not to look into any of them. But that's probably good advice to not. On the higher power ones, not to do it. So it could be the higher power one would work much better, for what I'm doing right now too. And I don't suppose they mention any prices there, do they? Actually, if you go to Amazon, the company that makes it is selling it on Amazon, but they're going to charge me a lot more money for it, so I didn't buy there. Then if you go to Robot Shop, they want like $600 for it, plus shipping or whatever. So don't buy it from Robot Shop. If you get it directly from the company, I think they want $303 plus they're going to charge me like $32 tax, and I got this with 3-day shipping for $284. So I felt that was a much better solution than buying it directly from the company. And I haven't seen since the company's selling it directly and putting out prices. It could be if you click the right things, you can find the higher power one or whatever it is you need. So. But I didn't look any further. I saw this and thought, boy, that's exactly what I need. And I was just hoping it's going to work a lot better than this.
The 166 version, do you have the 166 or the 167?
It's called 3D 160 something. So it's 160 pixels wide, whatever that means.
They've got links from the company to Alibaba, and they're like $85 to $140. The ones I'm finding.
Okay. And they do say
you've got to deal with Alibaba.
Yeah, and I've never tried that yet, so I don't know. Has anybody bought anything from Alibaba so they know how it works? And
I know I never got my lathe.
Well, I had dealt with Seed Studios before, so I knew they were reputable and I knew it worked. And then when I went to check out, it said, "You want this DHL shipping? It's 3 days at $15, which is discounted for some reason for $23." And I don't know if it's because I've gone with them before, or if everybody gets that discount. But I decided that worked out pretty well, because my other option, I think I could have got, it was either cheaper or free shipping, but then it was like 3 or 4 weeks to get it. So I thought, I was in a hurry, so I went ahead and sprung for the $15, and now I'm pretty glad that I did. So now I know I don't have to worry about this anymore. And it's new enough. There is no ROS driver yet, but I got to thinking about it, and probably what's putting out is just a 2D array, and each pixel in that array is a distance, and that's exactly what the Kinect sensor puts out. So possibly you could take the driver of the Kinect sensor and merge it with whatever's coming out of this to generate your point cloud from that. So I could probably figure out how to do that. And actually, when I was digging around, I found a data sheet that does list all the packets coming out of the thing. So if I had some extra time on my hands, I could actually try that and write a driver and see what it's going to do, which I assume it's going to do the same thing it's doing now. It's just that I'd have it available in ROS. And I haven't played around with this, their HDR settings. You can set it to manual mode, and you got a number you can run between. Let's see what it says here. If I say stop it and set it to disable, and then Well, it's not going to give me. I can click it up and down one at a time, but I was thinking it had something like 8,000 or something was the number I could put in. Well, it only goes up to. Oh no, I typed in 80,000. What else I was going to say? I forgot now. So never mind. Oh, it also says it has region of interest, and you can set zones on the screen. So if you go look at if you go to the was it Seed Studio? I think it's a Seed Studio website, and you look at it there, or they've got a YouTube video. I think I might have posted the link to that. And the YouTube video shows basically the screen I've got here, and then if you put it in the distance view here, let's see if I can get this to work. ROI settings. Left. Well, I don't think I have the ambition to figure it out right now. But anyway, you can set up, they had 3 zones set up on the screen, and they showed a box and a mop leaned up in the corner. And then if something is within that range, it's kind of a digital output it can turn on. So basically, you could have it set up to, if you're driving around and you're driving forward and somebody walks in front of you, you can just turn on a digital output saying there's something there, don't proceed, I think is what that's for. And it probably has some other settings here. There's something you can do, record and playback, but I don't know. I haven't played with that either.
You can set zones on the device and then trigger an I/O?
Yes.
Wow, excellent.
And you can set at least 3, and I don't know. What's it say here? Distance average. When it's running, it puts out some numbers telling you your average distance and all this stuff. But and the other thing is, if you look at the one on their webpage, or if you look at that YouTube video when it's looking really well on the box in the upper right-hand corner. Let me share the screen again. Share. Okay, I assume that's showing up. See, on the upper right-hand corner here, let me close. This is the region of interest screen. And they had a rectangle here, and a rectangle in the middle, and then a rectangle over here on the side. In their demo they were showing, and somewhere here you can set a group, and let's see, left, right, bottom, right, X. Yeah, you probably have to set group ID 1, and it's not doing anything. Bottom X, Y, bottom right. Oh, it says draw. Here, let's try that one. There we go. So there's 1, and if I set another one, draw up. So I drew it, but how come it didn't save it? Refresh, clear.
How do you set the depth that you're looking for?
I don't know. Oh, there's some things here. It says maybe over here in the side where it says ROI data, and it says distance average, and maybe you have to do that. Give it 10, we'll give it 100 something. I don't know what it's not going to do anything. But when it's running, it has these things that says alarm light, and it looks like there's 3 of them showing up here. So if something gets too close, it turns those little blinker things on. So I'd have to go dig on this. So anyway, let me close that box. So in the upper right-hand corner here, it says frames per second. So if I say start this, let me set it back to auto mode, set, and start. So right now it says it's running at 22.8 frames per second. And that's where if I point at something like that, here's where I'm having the stuff that I don't like. Hey, my region of interest is showing up there. That's what that box is right there. And here's something in Chinese. I don't know what it says. We'll see what it does. I have no idea what any of that is. This might be all the secret stuff here. We've got a guy here that knows Chinese. I'll have him look at it sometime. So let's go back to this one. So you can see in the background here is black. So if we say stop, and we'll set this to the simple HDR and set it and run. Now it says it's at 19 frames per second, and see, it looks a little better. We get some of the stuff in the distance out there. And then if I say stop and change it to super duper, set that and start. I didn't do anything.
Still says simple.
Say stop. Super. Set. Okay, there we go. Okay, now we got a lot more details showing up, and see it's running at 7 frames per second now. So somehow they figured out in their video how to set it to 3 frames per second. And it could be if you come over here and say stop, and come down here and say turn off the mode, and then we'll run it like that with those numbers, wherever they are. Okay, there it's not very good, so we'll say stop, and we'll run this up to say 2000, and run that. There it's getting better, and we are at 32 frames a second. So we'll say stop, and then run up to say 5000. I have no idea what these units are. I'm just poking at it here. And now you can see this wall here is starting to turn white. That's right in front of me, and that was kind of an orange before. And so it could be that for their demo, here, let me look at this door back here again. Okay, it can't see the door. It's hidden back there somewhere. It's too far away, or it's for whatever reason it can't see that. So it could be if you'd play around with the numbers, the setting here, you could get it to do something, and you may be able to do that dynamically. Say if you're outside or whatever looking around, and you look over here and say most of the area is black, then you could run that number up or down to bring it into view or something. So this is basically all the farther I've gotten with this thing. I hooked it up and decided it didn't immediately look like the answer to all my problems, and right at the moment I didn't need one. And if it looked like it was giving me really good results, I'd stop and write a ROS driver for it. But I haven't got to that point. Well, down in the bottom here, this display, I never quite figured out what this is. This is like the distance. So it's going to be the average. I'll point at the floor here. Oh, it is auto scaling as it runs here. So this right here is telling me, I guess the floor is 0.7 meters away. And if I point at the wall over here, it says it's now a little more than 2 meters away. And it jumped up. And if I point clear out there, and this is probably the average of the distance average, it says. So it's taking all the pixels and telling you how far away it thinks the average of the whole thing is, which I'm not sure that really is telling you a whole lot, other than it was kind of cute to put on their screen there. I was trying to, now that I have that, I set that region of interest, I was just wondering if it would tell me something. I don't see how to turn that on. So anyway, that's about all I have to say on that. Has anybody got any final questions on it?
Looks cool.
So does anybody want to talk about their boxes that are too small?
I'll give you an update on the lawn. Well, I was adjusting the. Show you. So I put that linkage in there, and then I needed to adjust. I don't know how you got your cursor to show.
It just does. For one thing, I set it to be a lot bigger than normal because it's just hard to keep track of it. So maybe that's why mine shows up.
I needed to adjust this down, this little distance. So I took a hammer and I hammered this, trying to move that down. Well, it turns out that this little plastic potentiometer, the encoder, is touching down here.
Uh-huh.
So you imagine what happened.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Oh no.
It had a pressure sensing device and it automatically shrank.
Yep. I've got some new ones on order. They're coming. They'll be here Thursday.
The trials and tribulations.
And,
The U-joint looks good, though.
yeah, I decided not to weld that U-joint. We talked about just drilling it and then putting in like a shear pin or a roll pin, and that's what I ended up doing on that. It was easier. Those roll pins cost like $1 for a couple of them.
Were you able to do that with a hand drill, or did you have a drill press and have it properly centered?
Yeah, no, it's not properly centered. It was a hand drill.
You could have put a Deutsch pin in there.
I could. There you go. That's twice the cost of a roll pin.
So I recently bought a small drill press, like $30 only, and it's just very lightweight. And I'm gonna actually test it out. It's got the drill chuck, included, and you can run it with your, the electric, the drill, and it's just really nice. I'm just gonna, once I build it, let me see if I have the, the box for it. I'll just show it to you. It's just really handy. It's really nice. It has a lot of it can center on even on the like a tubing. And you can just, you got the V grooves. It can actually sit flat on the surface. Got the like a rubber grommets, so that it, really sits flat and nice, onto any of the surfaces. It's got the, the recessed channel underneath, so it means that if you wanted to center something, or you have the edge to edge, and you can even find a center with it. So you can just rotate, and it will just find the center if you wanted to actually just drill right into the center. Just give me a sec. Let me see if I can find it. I think I find it really good. My use cases are like I wanted to actually drill the straight 90 degrees, the straight holes. And I could do that. And I wanted to actually drill into some of the aluminum tubings and stuff. So instead of buying the whole press, I just wanted to try with this first. I have the small press, but this one's like a Dremel press. It will not hold anything off like more than maybe quarter of an inch thickness or something. It's just like for the small electronics and stuff. Well, let me see if I can get it.
Al, how's your project going?
I can show a couple of pictures. Sam, were you going to share, or do you want me to?
I think he's going to go find the... Ooh.
That's a nice photo, Jeff.
Wow. Wow. It's perfect. So that would be nice. It'll drill right in straight holes. We got two demos going.
Sorry, I was on mute. So this one's the hand drill, like a press. Just put over here, was just the inbuilt chuck. Just put your electric, your drivers over here. It's got a spring over here, and then you can just go like up and down. This is the stop collar, so you can adjust the depth, if you wanted to do that. It has the V grooves over here. So you can put the small, the tubings, that will be perfectly centered. And it has the recessed channel underneath, so it means that if you wanted to center on something, you can also just adjust a little bit and center. It's got a nice little handle over here that you can actually put it flat, and I'm hoping that it should work really fine. And you can actually do the angle drilling. It's got the angle. You can do like 15 degrees, 30 degrees, 45 degrees, and you can actually do the angle too. This thing's called Accu Drillmite, and it's the Miles Craft company.
Nice. That looks good. You're almost ready to start manufacturing.
Yeah, I got many tools, but I like all the new tools, obviously.
Did you see Jeff's new robot? He's got the steering linkage working. He's got the motors installed. Everything's ready. Now he has the motor drivers. He's inches away from running around outside.
That's cool. Can we see that again?
Looks like you reinforced it with some metal. You're on mute if you're describing what you've been working on.
I wasn't describing, but I guess I could. That just simply I started off doing a wood frame, so I didn't waste a lot of metal, and then I was replacing all the wood pieces with my square tubing. I still have to replace the front axle and the front steering bearings with something a little more substantial than those pieces of wood I have. And then the linear actuator, it was too wide to put across the frame, so I ended up putting it this direction, and there's a big arm then on the side that I drilled into the frame to hook that on. That's those videos that I posted show that moving it back and forth. So that was my answer to it wouldn't fit where I wanted it to, so I went back like the model airplane guys do and put all kinds of little cranks and rods and stuff there to make it go. So that's where that sits right now.
That looks nice. Inch by inch.
So speaking of inch by inch, this is Matt's lawn tractor in my garage. No, this is my lawn tractor in my garage. So we've gotten the shroud off of that. This is the shaft. This is where Matt has his where his potentiometer refused to play nice with his hammer. And so that's where I'm at. I don't know if you can make out these this bolt pattern where Matt had used a pipe strap on the shroud that goes around this. I was actually trying to go into Fusion 360 and match that bolt pattern, and the idea was to, get this to a point where I could take it to a machine shop or someplace that could fabricate the number of motor mounts effectively out of, say, like 1/8-inch steel or 1/4-inch steel. So that is that's where I'm at the moment. Is now back into the physical world, having left the virtual world.
Some of the Actobatics link from Servo City, it might be really helpful when you're kind of just experimenting with it, like kind of prototyping, instead of actually having it manufactured or just designing it. There are lots and lots of hardware. There are lots of links and different patterns, and it's strong aluminum based things. So if you wanted to check out those, I think it might be really helpful. Just order it and then we can use it directly.
Sam, what was the name again?
It's called the components, like they're called the Actobatics, and they're like on the Servo City. I mean, there's just really nice collection. I mean, I love it. You can actually build basically any machine with it for a prototype.
So I'm going to Servo City.
Yep.
What does they sell there? The mounting?
Yeah, everything. If you wanted to build any of your prototypes, so be it if you're building a small machine or a small vehicle, or your anything, that that you need a solid, the structures. Basically, there are actobatics patterns, like they're like really nice pattern, and then they have so many things that you can put it on. I think
Under structural components, Sam?
Yes. Yes, and then it makes your the building experience really fast, because you can focus on building things what you wanted to build really, and not making things and what you're probably going to need. And they're very standard components. They fit together. They have a huge variety of static components. All the roll bearings, pillar block bearings. Connectors. Channels, aluminum channels, so it's really nice. They also have all the standoffs, available in aluminum. They have like all kind of saps, they have all kind of gears. They even use the standard materials like, what's a really hard plastic material where you made the gear out of it? Something Estel or something. So they really have everything ready for you. I mean, it's not going to be really cheap, but I think for the things that we want to make, I think you can get all the components really fast and build something really fast.
Yeah, I'm just cruising their website now. They definitely have a lot of angles and brackets and channels.
It's super nice. The material is aluminum, so you can cut it really easy. I mean, you can do it with the hacksaw. If you have like the chop saw, you can do that. A special cutter, if you have the regular miter saw, you just need a kind of a new, the cutter blade for it, and that's it. You're good to go.
Cool. I'll spend a little time with these guys.
They also have shafts and bearings and a little adapter things. So if you dig through there, they have lots of pieces that all fit together, besides just the structural components.
Yep, that is true. You get the motors, the servos, all kind of fittings. Like actuators. Even linear servos. That just runs based on the PWM, which are like really nice to have, but they're expensive. But you can literally run it off PWMs. So if you have that, I mean, it's just perfect. But they're expensive. But you have a choice.
Cool. Thanks for suggesting it.
And I had a thought for mounting your pot on your steering motor. Now, had you not cut that shaft off quite so short, what you could have done, if you would have left about an inch sticking out, you could have drilled a 1/4-inch hole down into that shaft and just stuck the pot right into that, and you can drill from the side, drill a hole and tap it and put a set screw in there. So that way your pot would be right on the top of that shaft as it's sticking up. And you just need something to keep the pot from turning, so just a fairly lightweight bracket to hold it there to keep it from turning. It has to be fairly lightweight so it can flex, because you're not going to get that hole straight. So, but just something that, just a piece of sheet metal or whatever to hold that in place.
Come off the actual shaft, and then that's one piece that it's attached, and then the other piece rotates on the gear. I'll tell you, I did notice something. There's some backlash on. I put the encoder on. I put the encoder on the shaft. I put the encoder right here, but there's backlash when this turns. So right now I'm trying to figure out a way to actually put that on this gear, because anytime this gear moves, you know that the wheels are moving. But with the backlash around this piece, the robot would think that it's moving, but the steering shaft isn't moving. I haven't quantified that. I don't know exactly what that air is in there and what effect it would have, but generally any slop you have in your steering measurement will make your robot wiggle, because it thinks it's turning, but it's not. There's no action on the wheels.
Or even worse, you think you're going straight, but you're really not. So you
Yeah,
keep driving, the thing just keeps curving off to the side, and that can be a problem.
Yeah.
Matt, the backlash, if you had the potentiometer on the shaft like Jeff was suggesting, would the backlash be there as well?
That's a good question. I think so, because there's a little bit of play before it engages the big disc, and if that big disc is moving, you know that the wheels are moving, and I think it'd be a little bit more accurate to measure that point.
So that half moon gear, the big half moon gear.
Yeah, I like most of the time they mount it out on the actual wheel joint on that knuckle, but I've looked at that like 12 times and I don't know really how to mount something out there. So my guess was to try to mount it on that half moon gear.
Can you put that picture up again that you just showed?
Yep.
Does that bolt in the middle of that half moon gear turn, or is it locked in place?
It's locked in place. So that big washer doesn't turn, and that bolt in the middle doesn't turn.
So I assume on the bottom you can't. There's really no way to get to the center of the turning on that thing. I was thinking if the plate was exposed, you could have just put your pot right there in the center of that. But since you got that bolt there, I guess you can't do that.
I mean, maybe there's a way to change that bolt and the washer system around so that you put the potentiometer and get it. There's a lot of force on that with the wheels bouncing around.
Or could you mount the potentiometer directly above that bolt and then have an arm that comes out and
Yep.
Comes out and grabs onto the gear somewhere. So it's an arm sticking out that they both the gear and the pot would be rotating around the same concentric shaft or same concentric line. Does that make any sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, so you mount the potentiometer here, but then you have an arm coming out here. There's a little hole
Right.
in this plate. There's a little hole that lines up, so you could actually have a little piece of metal that comes down into that hole, and then whenever that turns, you're measuring this piece.
Yeah, and in fact, if you do that, you're probably going to want to drop back to a single turn potentiometer, because I'm sure that shaft doesn't turn more than like 180 degrees or whatever there, or that plate. And a standard potentiometer, I think, turns like 270 degrees for a single turn pot. So you can get a single turn one to put on there, and that would probably help your resolution also for your steering.
That's a good point.
Matt, I'll have to look at mine, but that what I'll call that half moon gear,
Yep.
hard lock to hard lock, do you have access to the last few gears, or does it use all of that?
So there is there are a few teeth. I want to say 4 teeth. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So so right now I'm trying to figure out to put this pinion gear down here and measure it, but I can't get too close where I hit this one, and then I need enough teeth where it won't flop off. But that it would work if I could figure out some way to stick that there, or go here.
Is your mounting plate where you have the potentiometer? Is that something attached to anything else, or can you just redesign that like in 3D print it and then make it concentric with the driver gear and then put that back on?
Yes, if I had those skills. I have 10 snips and I have a hammer and a drill and an angle grinder. That's a good idea. Just redesign that mounting plate and use those same 4 holes, but slide the attachment point over
because Both the shaft should be mostly concentric in order to this regular, the gear to be worked, so that you get the smooth motion maybe. Because right now it seems a little, I'm not sure, by looking at the picture, it looks a little at the angle. Is that true?
Well, there is, the design does have a little bit of an angle. The this the this is not flat with this surface. There's a little bit of an angle, and this one is has a bigger angle. This wasn't drawn out in CAD, but I can adjust it a little bit.
Okay.
So and this is actually tapered. I'm drawing it more than it is, but it's smaller at the top than the bottom. And then these grooves, this is actually smaller than this. It's slanted, and I'm not sure. Oh, maybe they had to do that because of the steering rod is angled, and so they put a taper on the pinion gear, and then this is tapered so that it matches with this with the steering wheel shaft.
Oh wow. Okay.
Do you still have one of those automotive Hall effect sensors, like the level sensors? That's got the arms sticking out. You broke it?
Broke it.
Your hammer?
No, I attached it to those metal. I originally attached it to these arms. I mounted it. You can actually see the mounting hole over here, and then it had that swinging arm that came down here, and then I attached it to this bar. But this bar traveled more than the sensor could rotate. Now, if I would have drawn that out in CAD and measured the angles, I would have figured that out. But I did that experimentally and tore that thing right in half. So there's not enough play. There's not enough turn angle or something, or whatever you call that, to measure how much the steering turns. Mechanical, I'm not an engineer. Hillbilly. But we're getting closer. Try it, the brakes, try again, get a little closer.
Well, you still have the option of putting a pot on top of that shaft up on top, like I was pointing out to Al he could do if he hadn't cut his shaft off so short. So you've got that option, but still any play you got between those two gears is going to show up. And on my design I've got with my linear actuator, it's got a built-in potentiometer, but all my steering linkage is real sloppy, so I'm going to have the same kind of problems until I get that worked out. On mine, I decided it's close enough that I'm going to go with it and worry about it later.
Yeah,
yes, I was actually hoping, Jeff, to get access to that rod on the top of the motor and use that as the potentiometer driver, but now if there's this backlash issue, you have to rethink that.
Yeah, I didn't measure it, and I don't know the real effect of it.
So that shaft could turn without actually changing the steering angle, is what I'm hearing.
Yep.
That stinks.
I mean, you can even play with it on your lawn tractor. Just move that shaft around. You'll see it. There's a little bit of play, and it may be nothing. I don't know. Steering is a big issue. The jitter is terrible, and if your robot's wandering, nobody likes that. Everybody likes it driving straight. So I'm a little, I guess, skittish about that. I don't know.
Okay, onward and upward.
Yeah, we're at 9 o'clock now. Well, thanks for the demos, Jeff. That LiDAR sensor looks pretty neat. Hopefully, if it gets into ROS, you can use the PCL library and you can start using some of the prepared packages, and who knows. Is there anything else? Anybody need any help with any of the projects this week? One thought, don't do the tutorial with the Snappy packages yet. I spent a good 6 hours, 4 hours on that, and I can't get it to install, so I'll way be off on that. He was using a Raspberry Pi 2, and it was a year ago, so things have changed. That's the way the world works. But,
Sam, thanks again for walking us through the URDF.
Oh, you're welcome. Any technical challenges, bring it on.
This is being recorded, right, Matt?
Software challenges, bring it on.
there we go. We got him. All right.
Okay, gentlemen. Have a wonderful evening.
You
You
too.
too.
Have a great week.
Hey, guys.